Hello and welcome. Here's what's happening right now. A precarious new timeline as the U.S. weighs whether to strike Iran.
He will make a decision within the next 2 weeks.
As Ottawa promises to help Canadians escape the war zone.
The government is responding to the impact of the unjust U.S. tariffs.
The new counter-tariff strategy hinging on trade talks.
We really just have to size up the fire.
Plus, inside the aerial fleet fighting BC's worst wildfires.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
Hello, I'm Marcia McMillan in today for Sandy. The White House now says a decision on whether or not to strike Iran will come within the next 2 weeks. Donald Trump will receive intelligence briefings from his National Security Council every day for the next few days. Israel says it will continue to strike all of Iran's nuclear facilities and that the United States is already helping with that. CTV's Joy Malbin is in Washington and joins us now. Joy, what more can you tell us about the diplomatic window to avert a wider war?
Marcia, America's Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has been speaking by phone to Iran's foreign minister since these Israeli strikes began. And European officials will meet with the Iranians holding talks in Geneva to try to find a way to stop this war from escalating. Overnight, a violent attack on an Israeli hospital, the war raging on as the Israeli army intensifies its strikes against Iran's nuclear facilities. The U.S. president weighing the risk of America joining Israel's war.
Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, he will make that decision within the next 2 weeks.
The White House says Iran has been weakened, and with a diplomatic off-ramp possible, the president, after reviewing U.S. attack plans, holding off for now. Pre-positioning aircraft carriers and strike groups in the region, even stocking up on blood supplies. Israel has damaged most of Iran's nuclear facilities, but top of its target list is Iran's Fordo uranium enrichment facility, buried deep underground. Only the U.S. has the stealth bombers needed to carry the 30,000-pound bombs that could destroy it. Israel's prime minister pressuring the president.
He gave them the chance to do it through negotiations. They strung him along. You don't string along Donald Trump.
With the specter of the Iraq war hanging over the president's decision, is causing deep divisions among Trump's supporters.
If you're calling for toppling in government, it's incumbent on you to know something about the country and to think through the consequences of that. And you haven't, and you don't. And I'm saying that's reckless.
Okay, you engage in reckless rhetoric.
Conservative Tucker Carlson and Congressman Ted Cruz in an explosive shouting match, with Democrats warning.
And if there's one thing we know, it's a hell of a lot easier to start a war in the Middle East than it is to end one. And I have no idea what this administration's plan is going forward. Marcia, the president has reviewed possible attack plans, but with the chance of negotiation, the president is now buying time, stepping back to see what Israel can do, but holding out the option of U.S. military action. Marcia?
Joy, thank you. Ottawa announced today it will help Canadians in Israel and Iran fly home, though the path to safety won't be a straight one. CTV's Adrian Gabriel has more on what this means for Canadians caught up in the war. Adrian.
Marcia, many Canadians stuck in Israel and Iran have been desperate to get out. And now the Minister of Foreign Affairs is saying that if citizens can make their way to a neighboring country, officials are standing by to help book them commercial flights out of the region.
With the toll of this war expanding with each passing day, Minister Anita Anand shared this statement today, saying in part that Canada is extremely concerned with the quickly evolving conflict, adding that additional consular services are being sent to Israel, the West Bank, Jordan, Turkey, and Armenia. CTV News has spoken with multiple Canadians caught in both Iran and Israel this week. Up until today, Canadians trying to leave Israel have received this message through a Canadian government emergency WhatsApp account that in part reads, "You should not depend on the government of Canada to help you leave the country." For Iranian Canadians with loved ones trying to get home, their dire situation has been made even worse due to internet and cell outages across the country.
I have only the luggage I have here in Canada, and that's it. I have nothing else.
Keela Fakliru is a survivor of the October 7th Nova Music Festival massacre, where she was working as a bartender.
This is the bar where you were working on October 7th.
Fakliru arrived in Toronto nearly 3 weeks ago as a guest at Toronto's Nova exhibition. Then the war with Iran began, and her flight was cancelled. Then she received more shocking news.
Last Sunday, while I was here, an Iranian ballistic missile hit my home. I have nothing left.
You've nearly been killed twice during these conflicts.
For me, I have a guardian angel. I know that someone put me here for a reason. People are killing each other. And in the end, we didn't choose to be in a war.
After surviving the October 7th attack, her apartment now destroyed, Fakliru is calling for peace. Peace for Palestinians, Israelis, and Iranians. Like so many, she simply wants to go home and put the pieces back together. Marcia.
Adrian, thank you for that. Developing news from Alberta, where a rock slide may have left dozens injured, and CTV News has learned there is at least one death. This happened at the Bow Glacier Falls Trail in Banff National Park. RCMP and Parks Canada say they are aware of the incident. Officials fear dozens of people could be seriously injured. Emergency services are responding to the scene. That includes an air ambulance. Canada Post has reached a deal with its second largest union. After 18 months of negotiations, the national mail carrier has signed a new collective agreement with the Canadian Postmasters and Assistants Association. It represents over 8,500 employees who primarily manage post offices in rural Canada. Canada Post's largest union, CUPW, is still without a contract. Police in Quebec say a 3-year-old girl who was found after an extensive search needs privacy and time to rest. The 3-year-old was missing for 4 days before being found in rural Ontario yesterday, about an hour from Montreal. Her mother has been charged with child abandonment. CTV's Denise Roberts is in Castleman, Ontario, where the little girl was found. Denise, what are you hearing from police?
Well, Marcia, I'm standing literally meters from where the girl was found almost at yesterday afternoon. You can see behind me, it's the 417. We are that close to the highway. And police are saying that they believe she was here the entire time, so since Sunday. And when you look at this terrain, when you look at the traffic, it is a miracle that she is still alive. Here's more from the police on her condition.
She's still in the hospital. She's with her family. She's doing well, considering that she's been 3 days outside. She's dehydrated, but she's doing fine. What the investigation leads us to think is that she was left there and she didn't move for 3 days.
And Denise, what are police saying as to why they didn't alert the public sooner?
Well, the Quebec Provincial Police are standing by their decision not to issue an Amber Alert, saying that it did not meet the criteria. What we've heard today, however, is from a source in Castleman who had met the mother and child on Sunday. He had seen them, and he said the mother was in a confused state of mind. But he didn't know that this little girl was missing. He only heard about it on Facebook several days later, and he said had he known, he would have called the police immediately, and that could have brought this little girl's rescuers much sooner. Here's the police on that decision not to issue the Amber Alert.
We did look at every aspect of the disappearance. We don't think that Amber Alert was the right thing. The criteria were not met. And we did have a lot of information coming in with the media alerts.
Marcia, I can tell you that, we've talked to some people in Castleman today, and they're using the word miracle a lot. And as I'm standing here in this area where this girl survived for almost 4 days, it truly is something like a miracle.
Indeed, Denise, thank you. Nova Scotia is offering up to $150,000 for information about 2 young children who vanished almost 7 weeks ago. 6-year-old Lily and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan were reported missing May 2nd. The RCMP says it's interviewed over 50 people, received almost 500 tips, and conducted polygraph tests in the hunt for clues. Despite large-scale searches, some focused on specific areas, the children have not been found. Prime Minister Mark Carney is making some tweaks to his counter-tariff strategy. Changes the government says reflect progress made in negotiations with the United States. CTV's Mike Lecouture is in Ottawa to break down the changes and what they mean. Mike.
Well, Marcia, while the Prime Minister and his team continue to negotiate the removal of all U.S. tariffs, the Canadian government is taking steps to protect our steel and aluminum industries. Mark Carney announced if Canada doesn't get a trade deal with the U.S. within 30 days, our country will slap a new wave of counter-tariffs on American products. Now, on July 21st, the plan is to adjust the level of tariffs to reflect the progress that has been made at the negotiating table. You'll remember that back in March, President Trump imposed a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum coming from Canada into the U.S., and then he doubled it earlier this month. Carney also announced a larger Buy Canadian plan for federal procurement that requires steel and aluminum, any of those projects. Now, the Prime Minister said he wants to maximize the use of our own materials in government-funded projects, including at the provincial and territorial level. There will also be an anti-dumping measure with 100% tariffs on steel from non-free trade partners. The Prime Minister says there is a deadline for a deal with the U.S., but he won't be pressured into signing one.
We're willing to sign a security and economic or commercial agreement with the United States that's in Canada's best interest, and only that. So that's the negotiation. That there is still some room to travel, so to speak, before we get to that point. But we have a deadline in order to achieve that, and if it's in Canada's interest, we'll sign it. If it's not, we won't.
Now, with the 30-day deadline for a deal now looming, the minister responsible for trade with the U.S. told reporters he had meetings with his U.S. counterparts at the G7 in Kananaskis, and Dominic LeBlanc will have another meeting tomorrow. Marcia?
Thanks, Mike. Indigenous groups and some MPs are pushing back against federal legislation meant to break down interprovincial trade barriers and speed up major projects. The Prime Minister says it's in the national interest to fast-track the bill, but the Liberals are being accused of undermining environmental protections and Indigenous rights. CTV's Rachel Aiello is tracking developments and joins us with the latest.
Marcia, Prime Minister Mark Carney has promised and is on track to pass Bill C-5 by Canada Day, despite major pushback from Indigenous leaders who are threatening a long, hot summer of resistance if the legislation isn't amended.
The One Canadian Economy Act.
The bill seeks to grant Cabinet the power to rapidly greenlight major energy and infrastructure projects. But opponents say if it becomes law, it could override environmental protections and threaten national reconciliation efforts. Calling Bill C-5 a case study in how not to engage, Indigenous leaders have been making their concerns explicitly clear. In the House,
the conditions for an Idle No More 2.0 uprising are being written into the law as we speak.
In the Senate,
it creates the possibility of national interest projects ending up before the courts.
And in the media.
It would be like trying to pass this bill and not talking to the premiers.
Today, the Prime Minister asserted that consultations with Indigenous peoples on future nation-building projects will be core to the process that Parliament is on the precipice of passing.
Cooperation, engagement, participation is at the heart of C-5, and that is how you build a nation, and that's very much how we've designed it, how we believe it, and that's how we'll be moving forward.
Late last night, some amendments were made to the bill after a marathon committee meeting. Now, barring intervention, the bill is on track to clear the House of Commons tomorrow and the Senate by next Friday, with the backing of Conservatives. Marcia?
Thanks, Rachel. CTV National News. We'll be right back. A W5 investigation is looking into what may be the real payday for car thieves, not just selling stolen cars, but making bogus insurance claims. John Woodward is joining us now. And John, you found a particularly audacious example of this.
Yeah, that's right, Marcia. In our investigation, we found a Ferrari that the owner had tried to insure for $1 million. And enter some investigators from Aviva Insurance Company. They did some due diligence and determined that the car was not as it had seemed, and if they were going to pay out this claim as originally described, they would have been out a lot of money.
This Ferrari was insured as a $1 million car, a top-end 599 GTO. At least that's what the owner claimed it was.
But that's not what it is. That's not what it is.
Enter Stefan Nasner, an investigator with Aviva Insurance's fraud unit. And slowly, that car's image falls apart. The dashboard in disrepair. The display lights up with a different model number. And under the hood, the engine bears the mark of a different Ferrari.
You can clearly see this is a 599 GTB.
Not GTO.
Not GTO.
How common is deception like this?
Marcia, the insurance companies tell us it's very common. The VIN fraud that's behind this fake identity of the car up 300% according to their figures in the last couple of years. And the reason it's increasing is because it's getting harder to sell these cars and to send these cars outside the country. So thieves are trying to make more money at home. They can do it by disguising them and selling them, but there's a lot more money to be made by doing it through insurance, because if you get one payout, you still have the car and you can just do it again and again and again.
John, thanks so much. Still ahead, a critical resource grounded. Anger in Saskatchewan over idle water bombers as wildfires raged. Good news for hundreds forced from their homes by a wildfire in central Newfoundland. Firefighters have successfully held the flames from reaching their community.
Things have improved from yesterday, but the fact is it's still an active fire. It's still critical, and we're progressing under those facts.
Cautious optimism in Badger after rain helped fire crews stop the flames from growing overnight. Despite conditions improving, the evacuation order remains in effect for the town of nearly 700 people for a second day. In Saskatchewan, firefighters have faced an unprecedented start to the wildfire season, and now new frustration towards the government for grounded air tankers that evacuees believe could have helped save their communities. CTV's Alison Bamford is in Saskatoon with more on the concerns of residents. Alison.
Marcia, there are a lot of what-ifs running through the minds of people forced to leave their homes due to wildfires, questioning whether their communities could have been spared from the flames if more firefighting airplanes were available.
How huge of a difference could additional water bombers have made for the north, and how many homes could have been saved? How much sooner could this have ended for all of us? How much sooner could we have gone home?
4 of the province's 10 air tankers are currently grounded, waiting for inspections or parts that are unavailable. 2 others were out of commission for 5 days earlier this wildfire season. The Public Safety Agency says it was aware of the challenges this could cause, which is why it outsourced extra planes from other jurisdictions. Carrie Lentowitz, who lost her home in Denair Beach, wants an apology.
What have they been doing the last 8 months during the winter to hire more pilots, to get them trained, to maintain these water bombers? We needed them. We needed the government to step up, and nobody did.
The government says grounding aircraft due to maintenance is a normal part of operating any air fleet, and officials anticipate one of its grounded planes to be back up and running by the end of the month. Marcia?
Allison, thank you.
Coming up on CTV National News, we'll take you inside the cockpit to see how BC fights wildfires.
The role of the bird dog team is absolutely critical to a mission.
From detecting flames to dispatching crews, how one of Canada's highest risk provinces keeps people safe. Coming up on CTV National News.
We're getting a behind-the-scenes look tonight at British Columbia's aerial attack against wildfires. And the most pivotal plane of all may be the one you've never even heard of. It doesn't actually douse any flames, but its crew is absolutely critical, using technology to make key split-second decisions. CTV's BC Bureau Chief, Andrew Johnson, shows us how.
Before any planes drop water on a wildfire or crews attack flames from the ground, a pilot like Rob Verstraeten gets there first.
We really just have to size up the fire. We have to see what terrain and hazards we have to deal with. We need to see what the weather effects, the wind effects are on it, and what assets are potentially at risk.
It's a scouting mission in a $10 million state-of-the-art modified reconnaissance plane called a Bird Dog. The BC Wildfire Service has added 2 of them to its firefighting fleet on contract from Conair.
It's far and away the most modern bird dog in the world.
Conair made 13 modifications, including infrared cameras to detect hotspots, advanced weather sensors to spot lightning, and the plane is quick.
The faster you get there, the faster you come up with a plan, the faster you can contain the fire.
The plan involves orchestrating the aerial attack, deciding what to drop on the fire and when, and rehearsing the route those larger planes will take.
Any run that we would like the tanker to do for a drop, we will test it ourselves first, acting as a tanker.
When a wildfire call comes in and it's serious, a 2-person crew can fire up this Bird Dog in only 5 minutes. The air tanker can be filled with a full load of retardant in only a matter of 8 minutes, taking off in 10.
The planes are based at the Provincial Wildfire Coordination Centre in Kamloops, where 14-hour workdays are common.
What we're noticing is longer and more severe fire seasons. They start sooner, they go later. Fires get really big really quick compared to what they used to.
With communities now more often at risk, Verstraeten says pilots learn to compartmentalize, pushing emotions aside to keep their mind on the job. The reward is in the results.
We really get a lot of satisfaction out of keeping people safe and trying to prevent any loss of life or property.
Critical work Canadians will rely on heading into the most dangerous 2 months of the year. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Kamloops, BC.
Thanks, Andrew. That's our newscast for this Thursday. Be sure to join Omar Sachedina later tonight. And for ongoing coverage of Canada's top stories, tune in to CTV News Channel. I'm Marcia McMillan. Your local CTV News starts right now.